resources, no domestic market, a shaky economy, and a government widely expected to fail. Today, it's one of the richest countries on Earth per capita. Here's the strange part for this series. Singapore faces south, into the Singapore Strait, and south is supposed to be the one direction classical Vastu says isn't about wealth at all. Quick note up front. This episode connects several classical passages across this archive to build a reading. It's not a claim that any of these texts describe Singapore specifically, and it's not a substitute for Singapore's real economic and political history, which we'll get to. Keeps coming back to, south is governed by Yama, god of death and the afterlife. That's a very different assignment from west's Varuna, the wealth deity, or north's Kubra, god of treasure. Taken at face value, south looks like the direction of renunciation, not riches. That's the reading we used when we first covered Singapore. Passage from Mayamata and Manasara ties land declivity to occupation, not to the mandala's fixed deities. Physical labor pairs with west, political rule pairs with east, intellectual professions pair with north, and commercial activity pairs specifically with south. Singapore's entire economy is commerce, trade, shipping, banking, finance. Under this rule, a south-facing commercial city isn't a contradiction. It's the textbook case. Effect of a main door landing on each specific subzone of the grid, not just the broad direction. Within the south portion of that grid, one pada, Gruhakshata, means increase of riches. Another, Gandharva, means development of all activities. Another, Sugriva, means abundant profit. Only one single pada in that whole zone, the one actually named Yama, carries the death and destruction reading. South was never uniformly anti-wealth at this level of detail. One narrow slice of it is, and the rest genuinely isn't. Classical ethical restraints. Asteya, non-stealing and freedom from debt. Kshama, patience. Driti, steadfastness. Mitahara, moderate appetite. Restraint, discipline, self-control. That's not a coincidence of translation, it's the same word, and it maps unusually well onto how Singapore actually describes itself. Low corruption, high fiscal discipline, decades of patient, unglamorous planning. Artha, Kama, and Moksha, Artha, wealth, is explicitly defined as including financial independence and freedom from debt. And Moksha, liberation, the thing South's ruling deity actually presides over, is reached through the fulfillment of Artha, not by skipping past it. Wealth, earned with discipline, is the path towards South's real meaning. It was never the opposite of it. Wealth through discipline rather than luck. Strict anti-corruption enforcement, long-range infrastructure planning, decades of patient policy instead of quick wins. Even Singapore's land tells part of this story. Much of its modern territory is reclaimed, artificially elevated land. And there's a separate rule in this archive that elevated ground to the south, specifically, is described as bringing wealth. None of this proves anything about Vastu predicting Singapore, but as a pattern, discipline producing delayed, structural wealth, it fits this material closely. A few honest caveats. These are several different classical systems, the mandala's deities, the occupation declivity rule, and the pada table. And this archive doesn't connect them to each other the way this episode just did. That synthesis is mine. The elevated land rule was written for a single plot, not a nation's reclaimed coastline, so treat that connection as an analogy, not a citation. And none of this replaces Singapore's real, well-documented history of policy, governance, and trade, which this video isn't trying to explain. Singapore might be the cleanest example of it on this whole series. There's a 45-second version of this coming next if you want the quick cut. Subscribe for the rest of the city analysis series, and let me know in the comments which south-facing city to cover after this one.